Hello, everyone, and welcome to another NintendoFuse GameChat. Today, we're talking all about Sam and Max Save the World for the Nintendo Switch. So, Sam and Max Save the World is one of the first, if not the first, Telltale game that was released back in 2006. It is a follow up to Sam and Max Hit the Road from LucasArts back in the 90s, which is a point and click adventure game. This was remastered by Skunkabe Games. And they put this out December 2nd, 2020. And full disclosure, we were given review codes, so thank you very much. In Sam and Max Save the World, you are the titular freelance police duo going through different hijinks, trying to stop this mastermind that's going on along, or this plan that's going along. 6 different episodes, and each of these episodes is significant in length. They were released episodically, and they feel like episodes of a TV show, if you will. You're going to meet crazy characters. They're going to have different roles in each different episode as you go along and try and, well, save the world. So, Greg, let's go to you first. What are your thoughts?
It was certainly a very interesting game that it wasn't quite what I had originally expected, like from hearing even the kind of the title and even reading more about the episodic stuff. So this particular game only has 6 of the episodes on it, and then the other ones are broken off into other games, I believe, unless they're fully separate releases or whatever. I only went through half of them fully. I did use like a guide for part of it, but and just in terms of just like the gameplay, you kind of like walk around, you can interact with a bunch of different objects, you can like click on them, and then they'll either break out to a little bit of dialogue either with the character or just gives you more information on it. And then there are some items you actually do pick up. That's like, at least in the first episode, you can like pick up like a bowling ball and pick up like a wedge of cheese or whatever in the store. So then like it gets added to your inventory, and then you can use that particular object like on pretty much just about any other the objects that you're able to interact with. So then there's, unless you're like a mind reader to understand exactly where to go with each of these objects, some of them are a little bit more out of the box than you would think. I mean, some of them are easily pieced together. You can figure out like what you're supposed to do, but then there's some very obscure things where it can be very difficult to figure out. So the very first episode I was actually able to kind of solve without the guide. I was actually kind of impressed. I was able to figure out like how to progress through all the different story pieces with it without having to resort to that. The second one, not so much. There it was a lot more to take in, and I don't think I would have even like I couldn't even figure out like partway through like what you're even supposed to be really doing. And then that's where I had consult and had to use that to finish up episode 2. And then episode 3, I think there was only one particular section that I got kind of stuck at, that I just used it for that one thing, and then I was smooth sailing after that, just kind of filling it like completing it on my own. But the gameplay obviously is pretty repetitive between each of the episodes, because you're pretty much having to tap on every single thing just to kind of get information on it or interact with it. And then I do like, at least with the characters, there is several dialogue options, and then you can kind of dive into it for a while, and then if it's a really important piece, then you can re-ask them for that same information that they previously told you. But there is some very funny interactions with some of the different characters if you actually dive in through all the different dialogue options. But I guess I'll let Steve get a chance to discuss his thoughts and everything on this.
Yeah. So I haven't played a ton of Telltale games. The game that I have played the most of any of those is the Back to the Future game, and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a fun game, and I think I played it back on the PS3. I think is when I played that game. But I struggle with this game, guys. Like it's tough. It's rough. I know it's an old game, and I know it's an early game. And so I'm going to give it a little bit of credit for that. I think, they learn things over the time, and, they're getting better. I hope, we're going to take care of it. We're going to play the rest of these Sam and Max games that are here on the Switch. And I'm hoping they get better, because I am not a huge fan right now. Similar to Greg, I don't know how you got through the first chapter not being able to use the guide. I really don't, like, unless you just really dedicated yourself to it or you just figured it out so quick. I was struggling. Like, I did everything that I thought I could do, clicked everywhere that I could click, talked to everybody that I could talk to, explored everything like 10 times, and I was done. And I couldn't go consult the guide that Barry had posted on our Discord because I was on a plane and I was playing it. And so I wasn't able to, hop over there. So I talked to Barry. He gave me some hints. I went back to the guide and continued playing more of it. All the tips that were there, like he explained, it was like, okay, that makes sense why that was, but how did I not find that thing? Like the logic between like doing this so that this will happen totally makes sense. But I didn't even see that thing, didn't even have that was an option. And I looked everywhere. And it gets to the point where it was just like, I was getting bored because I was like, I'm repeating the same things over and over and over again, looking for the one thing that I've overlooked somehow. The dialogue it's funny, but it's also meh. Like in some ways, like there are definitely some times where I was like, oh, I chuckled some, but then it's also doesn't make sense a lot of times. Like you try to arrest some guys and you're like, you go down the dialogue tree of like, yes, I'm really arresting you. Oh, I'm definitely arresting you. And then when you get so far into it and realize, okay, you can't arrest him for whatever reason, even though you keep saying this over and over, like the only option is, okay, see you later. Like what? Why is that the next option? If you've like been pushing and pushing and pushing, you're going to arrest this guy, and then all of a sudden, oh, you can't. Okay, see you later. Like no, it should have been something like, oh, right, I can't arrest you, but I'm going to get you some other way, or something like that to end that. That just doesn't. It was lazy, if I should say. And then there's other things that just you have to like search everywhere and find everything. So like I was progressing quite far and I like skipped over some things. I had to go back and do it. And all of a sudden I realized, oh, I was supposed to take the car out. Had no idea. Didn't even know that was an option because as I'm walking by it, at least on the Switch, like it didn't pop up a little box like it does next to some things to show me that I could actually interact with the car. So I had to like walk super close to it, use my right analog stick to like push it in the right direction to find out, oh, I can actually interact with it. And the only reason I really knew is because of the guide. And so I'm progressing in the game basically because the guide's telling me this is what I need to do. And I'm only really moving forward that far because I know I need to talk about it on this game chat. If it wasn't for that, I would have given up a whole lot earlier. It's like this, what do you call those? The escape rooms that are just like really annoying. You have to get everything just exactly precise because this connects to this and this connects to this and this connects to this. And the logic is technically there, but it's also really weird and convoluted. And those chapters are long, but I think they're being padded. Like there's not really enough content there, but they made you jump through all these different hoops in order to lengthen it out to a really long time. But it really could have been a whole lot shorter and more succinct, and I would have enjoyed it a lot more. So that's my time with it.
And that's that. You know what? You're welcome to that. That's the whole point of this is to be open and honest. And I'm glad you expressed that. I enjoyed the first game. I do think it is the weakest of the three, but it's also the first of the three, and that getting your footing in. And of course, the first episode of that is the weakest. And I do think the first episode is the weakest one. So you haven't gone out of that. Like this game. If these are comic characters, so they play by comic rules. It is very cartoony. It is very out there. It is very think outside the box. It's not like there's any real laws. It's in the sense of like killing isn't killing. It's like Bugs Bunny gets shot in a cartoon or whatever. Like he gets back up. It's
go throw a bowling ball on someone's head and it just knocks him out and doesn't actually kill
just knocks him out. Yeah. Exactly. So you have to think fun things, and there is an overarching story that happens in this, and it does get crazier. And the first episode, it takes place safely on your street, as well as a few other locations. But the real craziness and the humor of it really picks up, like in the second episode, where you actually go to a TV studio, and now you're going through all these different TV shows, and you're on the sets, and you have to do different activities on the sets there's a quiz show and a cooking show and a sitcom, and you got to play around with that, and it's all completely absurd, and it's the same director in each one because it's all they have space for, and time for, and you could tell it's definitely a cartoon, and it's funny, and I think the writing gets better. I think the voice acting is superb. Like I love the performances of Sam and Max.
Sure.
I think the fact that so much of this is voice acted is very impressive. And I love the side characters, and there's a lot of gags, like Bosco's inconvenience store. Bosco's paranoid, and every episode he's paranoid about something different, and every episode you need to buy something from him to accomplish, and every time that value goes up. And I think it's the last episode, they ask him, why would I need to pay like $1 trillion for this? And he's like, I don't know, I just keep raising the money and you just keep paying me, so I figure why not. And it's a really meta joke about that. Like, and it's a video game, why is it this stupid expensive, but you're going to pay it anyways because you need to progress. And I love that. I love the fact that Sybil, who works next to you, every single episode has a different career, and her signboard outside just crosses off the old career, and she's constantly switching to something new, and it's always related to the episode. It's always needed with just what you need, and I think that's so clever. And I love the fact that it's a running joke, and they always say, "What profession are you this time?" And it's never taken seriously, and especially some of the later episodes, even in this, where you actually go to the White House and there is an election, and Max decides to run against the reincarnated statue or reanimated statue of Abraham Lincoln for president of the United States, and wins. And now, for the remainder of the game, Max is the president with Secret Service following him around, and you can create laws and donate money, and like you get to actually have that kind of power. It's all zany and it's cartoony and it's funny and it's fun, and I think that's the charm of this game. You got to get past that first hurdle, and I will say, like most point and click games, if you've never played one before, they involve you grabbing everything you can and using everything with everything to find the right combination. And there's a lot of optional stuff you can do, and there's a lot of stuff that just for interactions, and there's the stuff you have to do, and it's not always clear every time, but everything makes sense.
Sure.
And that's the fun of it, is discovering. But there's guides, and that's the cool thing, is if I don't know where to go next, let me use a guide. When I beat the game back in 2006 on the XBLA, I didn't use a guide because there was no guide, and I beat the game. And then for this, I did use a guide for bits that I didn't remember, and there were some changes between the original and the remaster. So things that I was like, wait, this was supposed to be over here, it's now over here. So do know that there are some slight changes, nothing game breaking or anything, just like objects moved around a little bit. Now, the performance worked. I played docked. Performance was really good on the Switch. Load times weren't bad at all. Didn't even really notice it, and I had no problem going between them. But my biggest complaint for the whole first game was the walk speed. I wanted to be able to move faster, and I didn't realize that there's a run until the second game that we'll
Oh
talk about later on.
no.
And I'm like, oh, there is a run. I
Oh
missed that. So I
gosh.
played the entire 6 episodes without ever running. I
Oh
walked
man.
everywhere.
I wouldn't have lasted nearly as long if I had to walk. That is a slow walk.
I did. It was a slow walk, and I walked everywhere. And I was
Oh
like, I
no.
was ready to come into this being like, that's my biggest complaint. And then when I boot up the second game, and in the tutorial section, it's like, hold this to run. I'm like, are you serious? So yeah, my biggest complaint was completely null and void. I missed it. You can run in the game, and
That
it
should be
does
the
make a
default
difference.
option, though.
It
Yeah.
should be the default option. I
Ugh.
agree. It's not. You hold a button. So Greg, I know you made it to the third chapter or the third episode into the third episode. What were your favorite takeaways from the first three? Like, what were the highlights of the scenes that really like stood out to you?
At least for the very first episode, I'd rather enjoy like the Bosco's inconvenience like security system. So like he's got this like thing that like if you're trying to shoplift, like a giant punching glove, which is like will knock you over the head. And then like so I was originally I'd picked up the cheese, and then I was like, well, I'm trying to buy it, and then he won't let you buy it. So then I was trying to figure out, well, what the heck am I doing? Then I tried to, well, maybe it has to go somewhere else. And then I tried to like leave, and then like I got knocked out, and then it took a little bit like longer, and then obviously you figure out that you're supposed to put it in like the kid's basket or whatever, and then he triggers the system, and then that's how he gets caught and knocked out. And then there was that part of it. Then I know you briefly mentioned like the bowling ball thing. That was also I kind of figured that out because like in the very beginning I had looked out the window, and then I was like, oh, you could actually look out. It actually creates a different scene. So then I already had that knowledge. Well, maybe I might have to use this window for something. And then like it kind of clicked was as soon as I found like the paint can thing to actually do the graffiti right outside front. I'm like, I wonder if it's really telling me that I need to like try to drop something. And then so I was trying to like interact and do different things, and then finally the bowling ball actually worked, and I was like, wow, like that was actually kind of that one was felt very creative as well too. But then like the other one just was kind of like fell flat, like where you're like rescuing like Sybil out of the closet, and like that was kind of mostly not very exciting to complete. And then even like once you do like the further down the line after you had caught all three of the little kid, like the kids, I forget their names,
Soda
unfortunately.
poppers.
Yeah, the soda poppers. Then it's like then you have to get like diagnosed with a thing, and that was kind of very infuriating to even try to follow the guide because there were changes in there, and then you had to like, well, which option is it? And then like you had to repeat that section several times, so that part was kind of frustrating as well too. Um, But yeah, that was like the first episode. But like even like the second one you mentioned with like the game shows and stuff, like I had literally no idea like what even to do on any of the game shows, and then even trying to figure out that you're supposed to like bake the cake and then take it over all the way back, run all the way back to Bosco's store to put ketchup on it because the kid didn't like tomatoes or whatever. So it's like I don't. There was no way that you would even think to do something like that after like you spend all this time in the studio, and then like it sends you on a random errand all the way back to the beginning, like the first area. But that was kind of frustrating, and even to figure, like I don't know how anyone could have figured that part out. I mean, he said he obviously doesn't like tomatoes, but I never even thought like you could actually do anything with like the ketchup at the store.
Right.
But yeah,
You
like at the
gotta
third one, they have like a caffeine reference. I'm like, oh, maybe I'm finally using this coffee maker thing. But no, like you had to put ketchup on something else or something. So like it was completely ridiculous, and I only knew to search there because of how frustrated I was with the second episode having to put the ketchup on top of the cake. But
Yeah. Yeah. I find that's the case. There's so many convoluted connections that yes, technically it's logical, but no one like unless you just really have the patience to figure all that out. Like that's really, and you have to backtrack all these different things. It's so annoying, and it takes away, I think, from the charm. Because I think there really is, like you were saying, Barry, like there's a lot of charm that's built into this. I think that I would enjoy the story, but it's just being delayed so much to like backtrack and go back and forth, and that a lot of the charm and scenes that I think I would enjoy, I'm not enjoying because of all this other stuff I got to do and figure out and all this stuff, and I'm losing the charm in it. What I do think is I wonder if I would enjoy this better as an actual point and click on a computer where I'm with my mouse clicking around rather than having to do this on a controller on the Switch and everything. I did enjoy it a little more using the touchscreen and handheld, which you can use, and that's a little more like clicking with a mouse, which is nice. But yeah, I feel like I would enjoy this more if it wasn't for the gameplay itself. The story seems charming enough.
Yeah, it's way too
Well,
much
it was
trial and
released
error
on
and
PC.
like discovery even. Like it's obviously it's much playable with a guide, but I don't think most people would prefer to want to have to rely on that just to play through a game. And unfortunately, it's a lot more trial and error than even like older games than that came out like in the 80s and 90s. Like it's like and obviously Legend of Zelda, even like the first one, is a ton of trial and error figuring out how a lot of the stuff works. But this just felt kind of almost excessive just because of all the different options there are to like, okay, I have like 6 things in my inventory and I have to click this, then click on this. Like, nope, don't do that. I don't want to hurt somebody with the gun or whatever. Oh, now I got to click this item on it. Like, oh, I don't want to do this with this person either. And then so it's like it's wasting time just to try to discover through all this trial and error to try to figure out what you're actually supposed to do when it doesn't give you any sort of inkling on like, hey, maybe you should go to Bosco's store so then you can at least like limit the range of options that you're supposed to do, like to like an area. So then you're not like flat out saying like, oh, interact with the ketchup dispenser. You're actually just saying like, hey, maybe you should actually check out this area to kind of lower down like the trial and error portion of it.
When you say that games weren't as complicated, even back then, I disagree. I think the early point and click games were very complicated games like Maniac Mansion and the sequel Day of the Tentacle, and all those old LucasArts games, which Sam and Max was. They all contained a lot of crazy things and going back and trial and error, and that was just the style. I mean, it was a different era, and that's what this is paying homage to. I do agree with you about a hint system, and I do think it would be really nice for this updated version to allow you, and you don't have to make it an option to turn on hints and not to give you this is where you have to go. Like you need to use the ketchup with the cake, but oh, you know what? You might want to go back to Bosco's, you know, to add some, you know, something extra to the cake or just some kind of vague hint to at least help guide you in the next direction that you should do or at least something like that. I agree. I think that would definitely make the game more accessible and it's something that could be patched in. I definitely think definitely could be added in. But knowing the game, it is definitely, you have to figure this out. Uh, so so just to note, the game is digitally right now available on the Switch. It's 19.99. There is a demo, so you can play the demo. And there was a physical release as well. Final thoughts and worth it or not, Steve? We'll go to you first.
I'm not going to recommend this game for the general population of gamers. However, if you really are into point and click and you're okay with that style, especially the older style, if all the stuff we've been talking about, you're sitting there thinking, Steve, you're just nitpicky. This is dumb. Like, why is this even bothering you? Then go get the game. I think you'll enjoy it. You'll have fun with it. But for others who are not into that, and this sounds like tedious, and it does sound like convoluted connections and all that sort of thing, watch someone else play it on Twitch or YouTube and to enjoy the story, and so you don't actually have to suffer through trying to figure it out on your own. That's my recommendation.
What about you, Greg?
See, I'm at this like really interesting crossroads because like I do really see Steve's perspective, and like the gameplay loop isn't the most engaging, and it's also kind of very tedious at times. But I think if they were actually able to like, maybe patch in like a potential hint system, or at least like kind of limit some of the activities and like all the slowdown from like making the wrong choices at times, I think it could be somewhat salvageable to be more of an enjoyable game to get through. But I think like in its like current state, I don't know if I can actually fully recommend it unless like you, as Steve said, like, you enjoy the point and click style games, and then yes, that's the game for you. 100% get it. But I mean, possibly at even a sale, you could probably look at getting it because I mean there is like some good humor there and interesting parts of it. It just the gameplay loop is usually the most important aspect of it, and I don't see that being very enjoyable for many unless there's like some improvements to be made it to make it a little bit more accessible to everybody else. So that's where I'm kind of torn on an actual recommendation, but I think it can be recommended if the improvements can be kind of patched in. But I think in its current state, without it, then unfortunately I'll have to make the not recommended option.
So for me, I think if you love point and click adventure games, this is an easy get. Hands down, you know the genre. If you've never played one before and you're unsure, then I definitely recommend trying the demo and seeing if it's for you, because it's a demo. Why not? Otherwise, you know, do I think there's $20 worth of game here? Absolutely, hands down. There's well more than enough content here for $20. If you get it on sale and you try the demo, you like it and enough, then I think you should go for it. Do I think little things could be improved, like the hint system we talked about? Absolutely. Going into this, have to know that you will probably get stumped. You have to think outside the box, and if you're easily frustrated, then that might turn you off. If you don't mind looking at a guide after you've exhausted your options, then you'll probably find a lot of fun here because there's a lot of humor. Like Steve said, if point and click sounds like the worst type of game for you, but you're interested or intrigued in the characters, there are comic characters. The game is very funny, and you could probably find a video to watch someone play, and at least see the story, because the story is crazy and it's well worth seeing. It's absolutely enjoyable. At least I found it enjoyable. So once again, want to thank the publishers for giving us codes. So we were able to play this and review this. Again, it came out December 2nd of 2020, but it is available right now. It's $19.99. There is a demo on the eShop. So for everybody that's watching this, thank you so much. And if you like this kind of game chat and other reviews like this, we have a bunch of them on our YouTube and on our website, NintendoFuse.com. So please go over there and check it out, as well as other videos and content we have, like industry talks, our bi-weekly podcast, and a bunch of other stuff. So Greg, Steve, thank you so much for joining me tonight. And for everybody out there, have a great one.
I guess we should get back to work.
Not yet. I'm still on my break.